Buenos dias und herzlich willkommen bei Gate 7, deinem Podcast über Fernweh und Fotografie. In dieser Show geht es um Menschen, für die Reisen mehr ist als Spaß und Erholung. Freue dich auf praktische Tipps und Tricks, wie du tief in fremde Kulturen eintauchst und lerne, deine Abenteuer in bewegenden Bildern festzuhalten, egal mit welcher Kamera. Bist du bereit? Dann los, lass uns abheben mit deinem Gastgeber, Kai Beermann.
Wie schon im Intro zum Interview mit Peter Matthias Gede erwähnt, habe ich die Zeit am Rande des Global Peace Photo Awards in diesem Jahr in Wien auch dazu genutzt, mit einigen Preisträgern zu sprechen. Genauer gesagt mit Emeka Obanor, Fotojournalist aus Nigeria, mit Nate Hofer aus den USA und mit der diesjährigen Preisträgerin Maggie Shannon, ebenfalls aus den USA, die das Friedensbild des Jahres gemacht hat. Ja, all das hörst du in dieser Episode. Am Ende folgt dann auch noch ein kurzes Gespräch mit Martin Sperl, Direktor des Fleming Hotels im Herzen von Wien, in dem wir untergebracht waren. Ganz, ganz herzlichen Dank auch an ihn und das Hotel, in dem wir uns wirklich sehr, sehr wohl gefühlt haben. Und so eine Veranstaltung wie der Global Peace Photo Award, die lebt natürlich auch von den Sponsoren, die dieses Projekt, die Idee dahinter auch unterstützen. Davon ist das Fleming Hotel eines gewesen. Ein ganz großer Dank geht auch an Lois Lammerhuber, der so freundlich war, mich dieses Jahr einzuladen. Ich habe die Zeit sehr genossen. Es war ebenso fantastisch in Wien am Rande dieser Veranstaltung zu sein, wie zuvor auch in Baden. Also wirklich ganz, ganz tolle Eindrücke, die ich dort sammeln durfte. Und hoffentlich habe ich auch ein paar spannende Gespräche für dich da draußen mitgebracht, die ich jetzt im weiteren Verlauf immer mal wieder einstreuen werde. Aus Baden habe ich ja schon ausführlich berichtet, aber es gibt noch einige Interviews, die im Archiv liegen, unter anderem ein Gespräch mit dem französischen Fotojournalisten Sébastien Lebon. Dann habe ich noch mit Luisa Dörr aus Brasilien gesprochen und mit einer spanisch-französischen Fotojournalistin Catalina Martin Chico. Also da wird in Zukunft noch einiges kommen. Auch ein Interview mit dem ehemaligen Direktor der World Press Photo Foundation und jetzigen Leiter des European Journalism Center, Lars Buring. Ja, also ist noch eine ganze Menge schöner Gespräche, die auf dich warten, spannende, abwechslungsreiche Themen. Und wo wir schon beim Thema Storytelling und Fotojournalismus, Reportage sind, dann interessiert dich vielleicht auch das, was Thomas Jones und ich in Zukunft planen. Am 1. Dezember verraten wir, wie es mit unserem Projekt Abenteuer Reportagefotografie weitergeht. Gestartet sind wir ja mit einem 8-monatigen Online-Kurs, aber dabei soll es nicht bleiben. Wir wollen weitermachen und wie genau das aussieht und was wir alles vorhaben, das erfährst du, wie gesagt, am 1. Dezember im Rahmen eines Zoom-Webinars. Wir wollen eine kleine Lounge-Party mit dir feiern, also wenn du dabei sein möchtest, dann findest du den Link zu dem Meetingraum in den Shownotes zu dieser Episode oder schreib eine E-Mail an info@gate7.de, 7 ausgeschrieben, nicht als Zahl, und dann schicke ich dir auch gerne den Link nochmal auf diesem Weg zu. So, jetzt aber erstmal viel Spaß mit dem Dreier-Interview vom diesjährigen Global Peace Photo Awards, die Gespräche mit Emeka Obanor, Nate Hofer, Maggie Shannon und am Ende noch mit Martin Sperl. Viel Spaß!
My name is Emeka Obanor and I'm from Nigeria. I'm a documentary photographer.
Hello, good morning, Emeka. Thank you very much for taking the time for this interview. You are the winner of last year, but you're here in Vienna this year because last year you couldn't travel. What was the reason for that?
I couldn't make it because my visa came late. It was actually mailed to me. So before it got to me, my flight, I've already missed my flight.
Mm-hmm. So, but this year you are here. How does it feel to be in Vienna and last night at the ceremony? What does this prize mean to you?
The prize means a lot to me, coming to Vienna. Being a photographer in Nigeria, it means a lot. My work is going global, and to be honored by the Austrian Parliament and Lama Huba is a great honor and an international platform. So, and also giving me international recognition I'm also giving voice to the girls that I photographed in my project.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your project. Before we come to that, let's talk about peace in general. This is a Global Peace Prize. Peace was presented from very many different angles by many photographers that participated in this contest. What does peace mean to you personally?
Yeah, peace means a lot, but for this particular occasion, to me, peace means being able to do what you want to do and not being forced to live a different life, not being indoctrinated. So peace means freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom to choose to go to school, as it was in the case of the girls I photographed who were adopted for choosing to go to school and eventually regain their freedom, and I've gone back to school now. So to me, that's what peace means.
Freedom of speech. You use photography to express, or you point out social injustices and also the pain that the girls went through that were kidnapped by Boko Haram, the terror group. Tell us a little bit about the project. How did you go about it? How did you find the girls? How did you get in contact with the girls? And what was their situation?
The first encounter I had was a relation of one of the girls who I met through a friend of mine and told me about the sister that was abducted by Boko Haram and eventually regained her freedom and have chosen to go to school. So I was touched by that heroism and the courage to stay there, to return even after months of years of radicalization in a hostile environment. So I was moved to seek out other girls like her in the same region to study their story, to get to know where their strength came from. So that was how. From there, went through some NGOs, through some churches, through some families. We had an interaction with them, and we were able to started with therapy. From therapy, we were able to convince the parents to work with them, and that was how we were able to execute the project Heroes.
Did it take a lot of convincing on your side to convince the girls to take part in this project?
Yes, a lot. In fact, we spent more time convincing them. A lot of time was spent. Photography didn't take much, because we live in an environment where everybody is scared, in an environment where the communities frown out publicity because they are afraid of backlash, and it's very common in our environment. So what we did was let the parents know that someone has to speak, and also we had therapy section at first, about a week. Sometimes 3 days for a particular family, sometimes a whole week for a particular family, convincing the guardians and the parents and the victims themselves that they need to talk about the experience. So we now had an agreement that their identity has to be hidden. That was a turning point. And I had to devise a means to photograph these young girls without revealing their identity. When we got to that point, they agreed. So we did therapy first. Then I did the shooting. So their names were also changed. And the project was done in a secret. Some of the schools where they were attending, we had an agreement with them. They liked the idea. And as long as we were able to protect them. It was quite risky anyway, but we thank God.
You said that you had to... their identity had to be not to be disclosed. What did that mean for your project? How did you go about that artistically with your camera to ensure that their identity is not disclosed?
It was easy because the normal traditional clothes they wear, the hijab, actually doesn't reveal their faces. But it's not like some of their faces were hidden by their books. Some turned to the wall, and we're able to achieve that.
Yes, the aesthetic is the very straight-on portraits. They stand against the backdrop, and you take frontal portraits, and they cover their head with books and with other devices that they use in school. So their faces they're not shown in your project. What other thoughts went into making these photographs from an aesthetic point of view?
If you like going back to the background, Boko Haram the name Boko Haram means against Western education. That's what it means. That's the name Boko Haram. If you interpret it in English, it's against Western education. And those girls were adopted for going to school, for choosing to be educated. Boko Haram felt that getting education will give them independent thinking. They begin to think for themselves. They begin to have their own ideology. Because believe that women belong to the kitchen. Women don't have a say in the society. Women shouldn't go to school. The job is get married, have children, cook for the husband, leave the rest for the men. Now, in my portrait, I made sure that they were in the environment of learning. Some of them were learning in their homes with letters written on the wall. That is their victory over the ideology of Boko Haram. Some were in their classrooms, some were in makeshift schools, some don't go to school, but they learn at home. So we use books as props, which is a symbol of freedom, symbol of education. We use letters, which is a symbol of victory over the ideologies of Boko Haram. We also use calculator, and also based on what they want. Like one of the young girls said she wants to be an accountant. She liked playing with the calculator. That was also a prop. And it was a young girl that loved to read comic books. She couldn't really read the books, but she loves looking at the pictures. I think her name is Fatima. She's about my favorite subject, the youngest of all my subjects. But she loves reading it. She was always with it. When you look at the portrait, you see young girls, you see books, you see letters, you see calculators, you see biro, which symbolizes education. I wanted to show their defiance, that their wheels are not broken, because we spend time with them, and for sure their wheels were not really broken. They really wanted to be something for themselves. They wanted to be nurses, doctors. So I needed something that will stand as a representation. You look at the image, first thing you see is letters, or first thing you see is books, calculators, writings on the blackboard. So that was the whole ideology. Because I couldn't reveal so much of the environment, so I had to use portrait, and I had to use a minimal, it's called a minimalistic technique. I didn't have much to go. It was quite a very difficult project to shoot. I had to take time. And I also asked a lot of questions. What do you want to do? What are your passions? Okay, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a nurse. So that was the whole idea, so that the picture can speak for itself.
So it took a lot of time to finish this project. And you said that for the girls, or it was very hard to convince the girls to take part in this project. How was it on your side as a photographer and to be exposed? Like you stand out with your name and people know who made these pictures. How was this work received in your country? And how are you seen as a photographer? Are you in danger as well if you get involved in this kind of work?
Like most photographers in my country focus on beauty, focus on certain issues like environment, but I focus on social problems in my environment. And working the project hero, I can say I endangered myself to an extent because I was within the hostile environment, even in most of the communities of how Boko Haram operating there. So, but a lot of persons felt it took a lot of risk doing this project. But I felt someone has to do it, and I wanted to do something different. I wasn't actually doing it for money, but I just wanted to, at least let me contribute to society. Let let me be compassionate. It was compassion really on my own part to reveal all that. So, but as I started I was shocked when magazines started publishing, like Rolling Stone published it and some other magazines. People were like, wow, this work is amazing. Who paid you? Who sponsored the program? So, well, I did this to myself. So, but I think there were a lot of risks, really. But there were also mixed reaction. In our society, it's not too common to say women are liberated, women are heroes, kind of. So some persons were not happy about it, but lots of persons received it warm.
What is the situation right now with Boko Haram, and how is this continuing?
It's horrible. If you go online, what they do now is mass adoption. So a particular state in my country, Zamfara, all boarding schools have been closed. Boko Haram will walk into a school and kidnap as much as 300 persons. And they're making a lot of money from it. It's like a business now. The last payment they made to Boko Haram, when they released about a few, was about 100 million naira, which is a lot. So it's a serious issue. It's continuing. It hasn't stopped. So we are hoping that things will improve. And we're also hoping that those who regain their freedom spirit should not be broken. That is the whole idea of my project. To let them know, fine, you went through a lot, but you can still survive. It's still an issue. It's a nightmare right now. In Nigeria, the major issue, the trending issue is insecurity. You can't even walk in the streets of Nantes right now. You can't be bold to come out and say or agitating for release of the girls or agitating for whatever.
The more it's important that you do this kind of work to point out what's going on there, to give these girls a voice and to show what they went through, what the situation is like. And it takes a lot of courage also to make these kind of images. So thank you very much for taking on this task to use photography as a tool as a right of freedom of speech, and then to let other people know, and hopefully maybe a change can be brought through this medium as well, if more people get aware of it. And in the end, maybe you can make a small contribution for the better.
Yeah, I wrote some things down. I don't know whether I wrote something down. After the project, we've had some setback. We've had some setback, especially the condition of some of the girls who have covered. Because most of my work, I focus on social injustice issues like rape issues, like the issue of forced indoctrination in Nigeria. So I teamed up with some group of persons to form an NGO, like a follow-up, to get feedback on this project. Because a lot of people were like, okay, now you've done this project. Okay, you have documented this guy, you've talked about the stories. What is being done about it? Government is not actually too concerned about a lot of these issues, kind of. We don't have a standardized or formal systems where these girls can actually be rehabilitated, trained to gain certain kind of skill and push back into the society so they can sustain themselves. And so, follow up of this project, we formed an organization we call Green Leaves Heritage, Green Leaves Organization Heritage, and we want to establish a kind of center, like a shelter, where they can come in temporarily and receive counseling, where we can bring them. With my network, I can do that now. We can bring them in and also bring in volunteers, counselors, and therapists to talk with them for a short period of time. And in the process, for those who don't have, who need to have a skill, we teach them short-term skills. And for those who need to go to school, we canvass for schools for them and look out for schools that will be able to accommodate them. Maybe problem scholarship or reduce school fees. So, but currently what we're doing is we're trying to raise funds. And just last week before I came to Oxtra, we started a crowdfunding platform. Giving Ways is the name of the platform. So we're hoping we'll be able to raise some funds. And when that is done, we're thinking of establishing a formal system, an institution where these guys can come, where we can help them. Within a period of 3 months, we're done with a particular set, another set comes in. And also continue feedback, follow up to make sure their progress is sustainable and continuously.
It's a great way to follow up this work and, to really make a difference in the lives of the girls that you photographed. I wish you all the best for this project. Lots of success. And, last question, Emeke, if people want to find out more about your work that we've just been talking about and maybe some other projects that you did in the past, where's a good place to start, maybe on the internet? Okay,
I have a website. And the website is emekeobano.com. EMEKEOBANOR.com. And I also have an Instagram page. You just say Emeke Obano, EMEKEOBANOR. You get me there.
Okay, thank you very much also for taking the time to talk about your project. I wish you all the best for the future for you as a photographer. And also as a father, you told me that you got 3 kids and they're waiting for you back home. Are you going back today, or how long is your stay here in Vienna?
I'll be going back today, certainly. Yeah. In the evening hours, my flight is leaving. I have to get back to my family. I'm really missing them a lot. But Vienna has been awesome. In fact, one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen, and the people are so hospitable and so nice. I enjoyed myself.
Great. Thank you very much, Emeke. All the best for you.
Thank you.
Das war das Interview mit Emeke Obano, Fotojournalist aus Nigeria, der mit seinem Projekt auf das Schicksal der Mädchen aufmerksam machen möchte, die von der Terrororganisation Boko Haram verschleppt worden sind. Alle Informationen sowie weiterführende Links zu Emekes Internetseite und seinem Instagram-Profil findest du wie immer in den Shownotes in deiner Podcast-App oder auf der Webseite www.gate7.de, 7 ausgeschrieben, nicht als Zahl. Und weiter geht's mit einem Interview mit dem US-amerikanischen Fotografen Nate Hofer. Viel Spaß! Hello, Nate. Thank you very much for taking the time for this interview.
Hello, Kai. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
We are here at the Global Peace Photo Award ceremony. Yesterday, all the prizes were handed over to the participants. You are one of them. Maybe to start off this interview, let's talk about peace in general. What does this term peace mean to you personally?
Oh, that's a good question and a big question. And personally, I mean, in terms of the photo competition and the content of my work, this was a peace to me is about non-proliferation and less nuclear weapons in the world. And so, the subject matter of my photography shows decommissioned nuclear missile sites, ICBM sites near my home near Kansas City. And so, and these are old sites that are 30 years since they've been decommissioned. So they're growing, nature is slowly reclaiming them. And to me, that's, probably what peace looks like. I guess another way of framing that is, that's a tangible aspect of peace when two countries or two sides of the Cold War decide that the world needs less nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and your project has a very personal aspect of it. Like it's in your biography how you got to the point where you took on this project and deal with it photographically. Maybe you can take us back also to your how all this got started, this interest in this particular topic.
Yeah, right. So this goes way back to when I was a 7-year-old kid, and I had an adult in my life at that time try to explain to me what nuclear war could be like. I was a kid like any other boy probably in the early 80s in America who was interested in war and liked to draw pictures of war and thought that was exciting. And so, my stepdad tried to correct that to some extent by giving me a more of an accurate context of what war was going to be like, what World War III was going to be like. And I think to his credit, he was just trying to express his point of view. But what that did for me, the 7-year-old boy, was really, filled me with a lot of anxiety. It's hard enough as an adult to deal with, aspects of nuclear annihilation and existential things like that. But as a kid, you don't really know how to process that. So, and so I didn't know how to, and so that stuck with me for a long time. The Cold War eventually ended, and so did, a lot of my anxiety about that. But then not, in the recent past as an adult, during the Trump administration in America, a lot of those feelings from being a 7-year-old kid started to resurface, and that plus the recent, technological advances in drone photography and consumer level electronics like that, plus layer on top of that, the information age, obviously the internet and information that can be found there. This all kind of came to a head for me, and so that's when my creative process, in a nutshell, started for the project.
And then you chose to photograph these missile. What is the term for that exactly?
Yeah, missile silos. So near where I live in Kansas City, in the early 60s, missile silos were put in around Whiteman Air Force Base near central Missouri, and these are 150 nuclear missile silos, intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. And they were active from the mid 60s to the end of the Cold War, in the early 90s when they were decommissioned. So this was a way for me to, sort of address those fears that I have, as a kid and as an adult, taking creativity as an approach to address those anxious feelings. And so what that meant for me was, finding these sites online and then driving over to them, pretty much that simple, and then photographing them. And there's a fine line between anxiety and intense interest. So, so it's not only an exercise in sort of self-therapy, I suppose, but also, it's a very interesting thing to consider that there were 150 nuclear weapons in the ground near, where I lived. As a kid, I wasn't particularly aware of these 150, just on the other side of Kansas City from where I lived, closer to Lawrence and Eudora, Kansas. But had I known, that probably wouldn't have been a great thing for me as a kid. You might have to. I feel like I'm running on and on. Am I answering your question?
Yes, it is, and these missile silos, they are reminders of the past where the threat was very near, and even though they're decommissioned today, they are still there, visible, or something is visible where these sites were, and some other threats have emerged in the days we live, and so there's this connection between the past and a threat that is still going on, maybe in a different way.
Yes. So two things about that. Yeah. So these decommissioned missile silos are not there anymore. And I just want to add, to the 150 that decommissioned missile silos that are in Missouri, there were also 150 more in South Dakota and 150 more in North Dakota, also decommissioned around the same time in the early 90s. And then in the early 2000s, there are 50 additional missile silos decommissioned in Wyoming. So, but that's not to say that the threat is gone. There are still today 400 of those Minuteman. Today it's Minuteman III missile silos in America, in the northern Great Plains regions, Montana and North Dakota, Nebraska. So that while those nuclear weapons are still active, and yes, they're not the same level of danger as it was in the early 80s when I was a kid, and the same potential for World War III isn't here today as it was. There's still concern about potential accidents with nuclear weapons, and we know now that there were many close calls during the Cold War period on both sides. In America and in the Soviet Union. And I have to say, I don't claim to be an expert about Cold War history or nuclear weapons, but I listen to those people who are. So there's a number of podcasts that I really enjoy listening to, that I think keep me informed, and, that way I have some background about, what I'm trying to talk about with this photography. And the other thing, it's still an existential threat to us today. And sometimes, something I think about, is that, when you think about existential problems today, maybe nuclear weapons doesn't come to mind, but it is still an existential threat that we have to, kind of juggle with the other ones, with climate change and misinformation and, the other things going on in the world right now. Nuclear weapons should be in the mix of our thinking.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about how you tackled this project photographically, and also maybe before that, you can briefly describe what these missile silos looked like, what they were, how they were constructed, what was overground and what was underground, and then maybe this leads us to how you went about photographing and documenting these sites today.
Absolutely. So this is what this is a good question, because this really is what sort of spurred my interest. Today, when you look at these decommissioned silos, and the way anybody would find them, the way I did is looking at Google Maps. And for a few years, I had wondered where these were. I heard that these existed in central Missouri, in the United States, and I had a very general sense of where they were, and so. It's, I think a lot of people can probably identify it's one of those nights where you just go down an internet rabbit hole, and you dig and you find something and you keep digging, and that leads you to something else. And what I found was a Wikipedia page that listed all 150 locations, so you could simply go to a Google map, and you see a satellite image. Fairly low resolution, but, high enough to give you an accurate sense of what's there. And so the first time I clicked on one of those, I was hooked. I was surprised to see the first time I looked for one of these decommissioned missile silos was that there's a very clear visual signature of what these of where it was. even though at the end of the Cold War, when these missile silos were decommissioned, all the underground components, like the missile silo itself, were imploded. And so no one can access these. You could dig down, but you wouldn't get to anything but just rubble, exploded concrete. Obviously, the nuclear missile itself was taken out and disassembled somewhere else. But what's left over today is this perimeter security fence, 8 feet high, 8 or 9 feet high, and that's really all. That's the access road, the original access road, the fence, and every now and then, sometimes you'll see something else. In Missouri, for example, the original power lines coming from the road are usually still going to the site itself. So what's fascinating to me is just to see what you can think, these elements that you can still find after 30 years. These are historic sites, but people don't really know about them. And if you know what to look for, then you can see it right away. Even driving over to it, it's clear that this is something that's not agriculture based, even though it might look like it today, because in many cases the original landowner or the farmer who owned these lands when they were taken by the U.S. government are they've bought them back, and now they're using them for something other than nuclear weapons, of course. So when you see these sites today, you see one aspect of the past and one aspect of the present day. You see this old this security fence that's sometimes still locked, sometimes it's open, and then whatever's inside that security fence. In many cases, it's simply just hay bale storage, for cattle to eat. Sometimes sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's for some other use. In one of my photos, there's a church that's been built right off the site, and now the parking lot is where the nuclear missile used to be. Sometimes it's just they seem abandoned. Somebody owns it, but they won't be using it at all, and it might just be completely overgrown. And the fence hidden. In one case, I have a photograph that shows absolutely nothing there at all. Even the fence is gone, and it's completely returned to the land, being used for growing crops.
Yeah, but still visible, and it's fascinating to see what kind of traces there are left, and what you can make of it. And you used a drone to photograph these sites?
Yeah. So, originally I thought, before I started making this work, I was thinking I could make that simply by using satellite imagery. Buying the satellite imagery or using it, somehow acquiring it. So I was looking for satellite imagery companies or organizations that either make it or deal with high-res images of high-res maps of the land. And I found that was not accessible to me, either because it was too expensive or just too something that was not really intended for a consumer audience. So I also knew about drones. I knew that those were growing in popularity, and there are companies that make drones that specialize in photography also. And so I use a consumer level drone to get higher res images, better images of these bits of land that I was interested in photographing. Also, in the United States, if you want to sell, or if you want to be able to sell your imagery from a drone, you have to have a license from the FAA, the Federal Administration of Aviation, or the Federal Aviation Administration. And so I did that, so I am fully licensed as a drone operator. And so, what that does for me is that, I have a framework of rules I know I have to work within, and so, having a drone to take these photos is immensely helpful, and it's pretty simple. I go up 400 feet, I face the camera straight down to the earth, and get that parcel of land that was originally kind of the way I photograph it in a way inspired by Google Maps, where it's just very matter-of-factual, very documentary, looking directly down. So something informed by Google Maps right away, when I was looking for these Minuteman sites in Missouri, is that it was evident that all 150 of these ICBM sites were identical, which is unsurprising, right? They're made for the Air Force, and so they need to be just very simple and straightforward the way they were built. And in fact, that was why they were designed. The nuclear missile platforms before Minuteman were a bit more unwieldy to operate. In those cases, that you had like the Titan and the Atlas missile silos that preceded the Minuteman missile silos. Took more people to operate them. Minuteman was designed to be very simple, a lot simpler, so that you could have one launch control facility and then a series of 10, and then you repeat that 15 times, so you have 150 of those. It was clear from Google Maps that all 150 of these Minuteman sites were identical at one time while they were in service from the mid 60s to the early 90s. However, today they all look different. They each have their own sort of visual personality, and it's clear in most cases what they're used for today. And so this is the part that's most interesting to me, is that while all 150 of these sites were identical while they were being used, once they were decommissioned, then I think the most interesting part of their life began. These sites are historic, from the Cold War, but after the Cold War, they're either starting to become overgrown or used in another way, sometimes in a completely different way from what they were used for initially. For example, if being used for a nuclear weapon, and then after their military life being used for a church parking lot, in another instance, there was another site in particular that was owned by another church that it was being used to sell fireworks for the 4th of July on. So I thought that was very coincidental or ironic, and so that's the part that interests me the most. And by looking closely at what these decommissioned missile sites look like today, after 30 years of not being used for nuclear weapons, I think shines a light on arms control and deproliferation. That's the crux of it for me. We're being reminded that, hey, the two superpowers of the world at the time of the Cold War decided that the world needed less nuclear weapons, and here is proof of that. How does that affect our outlook for the future? I think it suggests we should think about arms control more. It clearly worked at one time for the world. Here's evidence of it. It's just a reminder that, to me and hopefully for others, that we need less nuclear weapons. That's what peace, we want peace and more peace and less weapons. A question you didn't ask, but hopefully the future of this project will take me to the other side of the former Iron Curtain, and find and document, photograph decommissioned ICBMs in the former Soviet countries or Russia itself. Now that's a bit of a pipe dream at the moment, but if I'm able to get funding, then for something like that, then I can think a little bit more seriously about it. But the ultimate goal would be able to, put up in a gallery one of these decommissioned missile silo photographs from America and one from Russia, and just to, again, be reminded that, hey, the world decided it needed less nuclear weapons at some point, and maybe we should keep doing that.
Yes, and just as these silos took on a life of their own once they were decommissioned, you just described how your project evolved along the way, that you started out with an idea of what you wanted to show, but now there are more aspects coming into play. What, in terms of, or in this context, what does this prize that you received mean? Also, getting the word out, getting your work out for people to see it, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's so significant that this prize is here in Vienna, Austria. This is the town of the IAEA, and it was the town of the JCPOA talks up until recently, when those fell through, unfortunately. So to be able to be in this city physically, to be part of this award ceremony, is huge for me. So and just almost unbelievable. So that's kind of where I think my next steps start. That's, this city is historic for, as I've come to find out recently, Cold War negotiations and talks at that time. And so this photography project of mine deals with the Cold War, and it seems very appropriate to be here to receive this award, and then to hopefully, get some momentum about doing additional promotion for this work, and that's something I'm starting to kind of wrap my mind around, today. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. And how has your work been received at home?
That's a good question. Of course, among friends and family, they get it, and because this is something I won't stop talking about. I won't shut up about. So they get it. I have shown it in a few galleries locally around the Kansas City area, mostly libraries. It's actually up now at a library in Kansas City, and the goal is to, hopefully get a little bigger than that, and perhaps show it in other cities. I think it would be particularly appropriate to be able to show this stuff in the communities where these missile silos existed. I've gotten plenty of rejection letters from galleries and plenty of rejection letters for arts funding. So that's been a challenge. But to those who get it, it's an easy yes. And so I've been lucky to work with a few galleries, showing the work locally.
Nate, you're not a photographer by training. You work in an agency as a graphic designer. and in advertising as well. When and how did photography come into your life, and what does the medium photography mean to you?
That's a good question. Yeah. I've been interested in photography for a long time. All the way back in art school, we were required to have some darkroom time. And we learned how to use manual cameras, and I've always been interested since that. My first photography class was actually photojournalism in high school, and that was very interesting to me. And I think in a parallel life somewhere, perhaps I am a photojournalist. So that the interest has always been there for me. But it's only until recently when I think I've really come into my own in terms of context and meaning and content for making photographs. I've had Polaroid film in my refrigerator for quite some time at home, and I have some vintage cameras, and I've tried my hand at some approaches to doing photography, aspiring to a level of art, with limited success, but so it was really just in the last few years when this project started coming together that I had an aha moment. And it's like, okay, this is my muse now. This makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows that it needs this inner urge to tell something that comes from you, like your personal experience from your childhood. As you described that you saw this dystopia also. I think there was a TV series that kind of was a big influence on how you felt about these things. So just go after these things that you feel, that you've experienced, and express that through photography. I think that's a way to make a powerful work.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, I think The Day After, the made-for-TV movie in America, I think it aired in 1983. And this was something that in America, it was a very big moment. This was at the height of, Reagan and the Cold War, in the United States. And, there was, I don't know what the numbers were, but it was one of those nights in America where everybody was watching the same TV show, back when that still happened, The Day After was a movie about nuclear annihilation. It was not a happy ending kind of movie. And my mom knew this, and I think I knew about this movie probably from other kids at school talking about it. And it was a movie I was not allowed to watch. And to this day, I still haven't seen it. Although, it looks like it's on YouTube for free, at least in America. So I probably will end up watching it sometime pretty soon, finally. But that was, if you're not allowed to watch something, that's something that really sticks with you. And on some level as a kid, you get it like, oh, this is not for me. So this really must be something big,
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed looking at your work. I think it's an important work, and that it's a reminder that how close we once were to destruction, and how close we can get in just a split second. It can happen again. The dangers are they don't lack these days. There are plenty of them, and so
there's plenty of them today, and there's talk of a new arms race. Russia still has weapons. The United States still has weapons. There's new weapons being developed. There's treaties going away, and there's new threats now. China is building its arsenal. It's a different level still from the United States and Russia, but things are not going the right direction today in terms of nuclear weapons and disarmament. So we don't want to go back to where we've come from. And hopefully this work that I'm making speaks to that.
Yeah, it really does. And, well, it was a pleasure talking to you about this not so pleasant topic, but an important topic. And I wish you all the best for the continuation of your project. And I'm gonna follow it. And maybe you can go to Russia one day and kind of get the pictures to juxtapose them to the ones you've already taken.
Thank you. Yes, I hope that happens.
Thank you very much and have a safe trip back home.
Great. Thank you, Kai. This has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Und abschließend folgt noch ein Gespräch mit der diesjährigen Gewinnerin des Global Peace Photo Awards 2021 mit Maggie Shannon. Sie hat das Friedensbild des Jahres gemacht. Es ist ein Bild aus ihrer Reportage Extreme Pain, but also Extreme Joy, großer Schmerz und große Freude. Ein Projekt, das sich mit Hausgeburten in den USA während der Pandemie beschäftigt. Viel Spaß! Hello, Maggie. Thank you very much for sitting down here with me. And I'm very, very happy to be able to talk about your project. And first of all, congratulations on your big prize. You won the Peace Image Award last night at the ceremony. What did you think when your picture got presented and when you understood that it was you who won this prize?
I think I said, shut up. But no, it was just so incredible to see it printed, like beautiful and big. And yeah, no, it was a very special moment. I'm very honored.
Yeah, you said yesterday we were talking and that you never seen the pictures printed that big. You printed them out like in small format to do the editing of the series and that to move them around on your table. But to see the work like that is extra special, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much detail in it. So seeing that all like beautiful and crisp was really special. Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned that you won a prize for the picture, but let's talk about what's to be seen on the picture. Maybe that's also an interesting topic. Could you describe what the image shows that was picked for this award?
Yeah. So it was right after Mother Aquila's birth. She gave birth at a center in Arcadia, California, that's run by midwife Ximena Perez. And it was right after, and her husband came running and jumped into the birthing pool and gave his daughter a kiss on the head for the first time. And it was this very tender moment that I feel very lucky to be able to have captured.
Yeah, it's part of a very intimate project that you shot during difficult times during Corona pandemic. How did this start? When did you get the idea for the project? And describe a little bit what it is about.
Yeah. So even right before we went into lockdown in LA, I was having a conversation with my friend who's a doula. And she mentioned that there might be a rise in home births due to the pandemic. There were reports of hospitals preventing partners, husbands, even doulas, parents not in the birthing room. So women were forced to give birth alone. And so she mentioned that there could be a rise in home births. So I started reaching out to midwives just across the United States. And they said, yes, it's very crazy. And it was putting a lot of stress on them because a lot of women were trying to switch at the last minute to a home birth, which is not the safest thing to do. But yeah, so I started following midwives as they shifted their practices due to the pandemic. And yeah, I think there were 4 in Los Angeles that allowed me to follow them. And then a few women who were their patients allowed me in to photograph their births as well.
I imagine it's, on 2 levels, a very delicate topic. Like, first of all, in the midst of a pandemic, to be that close where everybody kept their distance, and then to be present at something that intimate as giving birth to a child, and then also like the intimacy of the mothers involved and the fathers and having their kids being born. So how did you go about that to establish trust of the people that you were photographing?
Yeah, so whenever all the midwives were the ones that kind of casted the project for me. So they would say, hey, I have this woman that's interested in being part of your project, because they were kind of like my hype women too. But so they would give me their contact info, and then I would call and try to arrange like an outdoor socially distanced meetup, just so we can kind of meet face to face beforehand, and they could get comfortable with me and hear about my project and ask me questions, just so we could feel more comfortable with each other beforehand. And yeah, I think for a few of them, I like did some quarantine stuff. Like Jess Anderson, I remember she was like really nervous because her mom was flying in too. And so I just, we worked out this plan where, I wasn't going to the grocery store for a little bit and all of that. So, yeah.
What were the concerns of the people that you were photographing in these talks that you had with them previous to actually taking the pictures? What were the topics that you were talking about?
I think they just wanted to get to know me and hear more about the project. I was pretty surprised at how open everybody was. I think they were just like curious about why I was doing it. But then once I explained that, they were like, okay, yeah. I mean, it was like a lot more simple than I thought it would be, but maybe I'm discounting myself a little bit. But yeah, no, I think that it was just nice to get to know each other on like a more personal level and like see that it's a person and not like, this unknown photographer that's going to come in like, cameras blazing and everything. But yeah.
I think that's like being a documentary photographer. That's a big part of your work to explain to people what you are doing, because these are people that are not used to being in the spotlight, and they might not understand at first what this is about and why is it so special, this kind of project. Can you elaborate a little bit on that topic? How also maybe in other projects, how do you see this part of your work previously to taking the pictures?
Yeah, definitely. I think I just encountered this on another project too. I was going to county fairs, photographing pie eating contests, and a lot of people were like, why, why do you care? And then also like, why my tiny town? And I think that like, that's exactly why, because I don't know, that's kind of the reason why, like that special thing of like, if you're asking why me, then that's the reason why I want to go. It's not like an innocence or something, because that's like not the right word for it, but I don't know if I'm making sense.
But maybe that also has something to do with your own motivation to take photos. What is it that gets you going, and why you are a documentary photographer? What's the fascination about exploring different aspects of life with your camera?
Yeah, definitely curiosity. I feel like photography lets you in through doors that you might not normally get to go through, and meet such amazing people. But yeah, I feel like, one of my earliest projects was on shark fishing, and I was so curious as to how that worked. And so I, started going to a tournament and then met all these fishermen, and they let me go on a boat with them. And I learned like about every aspect of shark fishing. And I feel like you become like an expert on super specific things like shark fishing and, I'm not an expert in midwifery because that would involve like, getting a degree, but I know like more than I did when I started the project. And now I know a lot about like 4-H and county fairs and how to organize a county fair. So I think it's so fun to get a glimpse of like a different life, especially one that's different than our own. Because I feel like, living in Los Angeles or when we were in New York or even Massachusetts, like, I don't know, you have this like one little path, but with photography, you get to brush all these different lives and learn about different experiences. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can relate to that curiosity and getting the chance to see things that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to see. It's a big, motivation to take up a camera. Maggie, and going back to this project, when you were then finally able to enter the homes of the people, of the women giving birth. What was that like for you? How did you go about finding the right moments to snap your photos, and how were you moving around the whole scene with what's going on there?
Yeah, I think one of the highest compliments a midwife gave to me was "Oh, I forgot you were here," which is kind of impressive because I shoot with a handheld flash for this story. So the fact that they didn't even see me despite my flash going was pretty cool. Because I definitely didn't want to be disruptive of the birth or take away from that experience for the mother. But yeah, I was constantly moving around and moving in and out of the room too, and getting tight and then also far away. But I would also give them breaks, especially if there was a moment where there was a lot of pain. I think there were a lot of choices is this a picture that tells, her story of her birth, or is it a, gotcha photo or something? So is it a respectful photo of her? So that was definitely something that crossed my mind while I was shooting.
And then there's also the question, if you are in the midst of something like that, there are the important pictures or the moments that you encounter. And then do you also try to think, how can I compose this? Or is it more intuition that you press the shutter button and composition is not that much on your mind?
That's definitely on my mind. Yeah, I think for this, I was shooting... I was shooting with the 2470 just so I was able to move in and out. So I would compose each shot, and line it up. So moving around, lining up where the birthing pool was or, where people were. I think composition was very important.
What other aspects in terms of the aesthetics of the project were important to you?
Yeah, I think shooting in black and white was a fun shift for me because I think I was so inspired by Country Doctor for this story. Originally I was working with an editor, David Karthus, on it, and he was such an incredible resource. We talked every day on the phone. And I was sharing images with him and all the info I was getting from the midwives and the mothers. And I don't know if he mentioned it first or I mentioned it, but we were this should be in black and white because it just makes it feel so timeless, which kind of hints and alludes to the fact that birth is so timeless. We've been doing this for so long, And I think, and it was a fun choice to make it black and white because I feel the work feels very, very different in color and it's almost a distraction because it takes away from the emotion that you see.
Your image was chosen in a contest that had peace as a topic. And how do you see this peace tied into the theme of your project? What does peace mean in context of your series documenting women giving birth to their children?
Well, I think the title kind of goes into this in a nice way. Extreme pain, but also extreme joy. Because I feel there is so much pain, but with pain, you can't lose sight of the joy too. And I feel that's the same with peace in a way. There's so much unfairness in the world, but, you can't lose sight of hope. And so I feel those two are very tied in for me, just trying to remember those joyful moments to fight back the darkness, especially right now and especially last year. I feel personally working on this project during the pandemic really saved me in a way. Just being there for these incredible moments of hope and joy, despite the sadness. I would come home from a birth and see the numbers of deaths, just be well, at least there was this beautiful birth today. Someone was born despite this. So yeah, I think that it's something special. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, it makes total sense to you have both sides. I mean, there's sadness, there's not so pleasant things, and then there's light on the other, and they both are there. They're both present, and to see it like this in a dark times like that, I can imagine how that was something that really got you through, and that lifted you up as well working on this project. What did the women say when they saw the photos? I mean, it's like something, if you think of family pictures, they are, most of the time not that intimate, and they're a totally different style of photography. And how was that like? Or did you show the pictures afterwards to all of them?
Yeah. I made a gallery for each mother, and they're able to that was very important to me, because I wanted it to feel collaborative, and I wanted them to, have a say too, and like images, like, maybe don't show that one or whatever. But they all were like, we love all of these, please show all of them, so that trust, I think, in me as a photographer and image maker, that felt really cool, and that they were so supportive of me and the project and the images. Yeah. And I kept pushing them back too. I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yes, stop asking. So yeah, that was really cool.
I'd like to talk a little bit about how you got into photography and step back a little bit from this current project that you presented here. How did you get into photography? Did you study photography, or are you a self-taught photographer?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have an amazing art teacher in high school who pushed me into taking a photo class. And then that kind of, I continued it in college. I was originally a photo history major, and then I took a photo 1 darkroom class, and it all kind of just spiraled from there. So I have a master's degree in photography from the School of Visual Arts in New York. I'm maybe like overeducated in photography. But I don't know, I love it so much. I feel like I knew as soon as I took that class in high school, I was like, this is what I want to do. I just need to figure out how to how to make it into a job. So with support from like so many amazing professors, and also friends, that I met in New York City, like feel like I found my path, and I feel very lucky.
How do you see yourself as a photographer from here onto the future? What are some projects that are maybe already lingering in your mind? What you still want to do in the coming years?
Oh, I have so many things. I feel so lucky where, I have like so much curiosity about the world around me, and there's always something where I'm like, oh, what's that? And my husband makes fun of me because I'll say like, I think there's a story there, and he'll be like, oh, there we go again. But there's so many stories, and I just finished something about proms in California for the New York Times. That was a pitch that I worked on, and then did a road trip around the West, and just met so many great people. And then I don't know, there's something. There's an island near where I grew up called Cuttyhunk, and I feel like there's definitely something there because it's even more isolated than where I grew up, and I'm so curious. And I've been talking to people that live there year round, and they want me to come out and see. So yeah, there's so many little things happening that I'm excited to explore, especially now that we're vaccinated and things are kind of opening up a little bit. So yeah.
Follow your curiosity. That's really, something that's great about photography. You never know where you're going to end up. If you follow your curiosity, it might lead you to amazing places, and you discover things. And, I wish you, good luck on your future projects, Maggie. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And, for, the listeners who want to learn more about your work, what's the best place to do that?
I probably update my Instagram the most, so it's just Maggie H. Shannon. So, yeah.
Okay, go from there, and you have a website as well.
Yeah, maggieshannon.com. Finally got the domain.
Great. Thank you very much, and enjoy your time here in Vienna, and good luck for what's coming up.
Yay, thank you so much. Such a pleasure talking with you. This is lovely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Und abschließend noch ein kurzes Interview mit Martin Sperl, dem Direktor des Fleming Hotels, in dem wir untergebracht waren, mitten im Herzen von Wien. Und ja, jede Veranstaltung von der Größenordnung des Global Peace Photo Awards braucht natürlich starke Partner. Und das Fleming Hotel ist einer solcher Partner. Insofern, ja, viel Spaß auch noch mit dem Interview mit Martin Sperl, der auch ein paar gute Tipps für einen Wien-Besuch parat hat. Ich werde auf jeden Fall in die österreichische Hauptstadt zurückkehren, denn so viel Zeit blieb am Rande des Programms nicht, sich die Stadt ausgiebig anzugucken. Das werde ich auf jeden Fall nachholen, denn der erste Eindruck war schon so, dass es eine Stadt ist, die man sich mit viel Zeit genauer anschauen muss. Viel Spaß! Ja, schönen guten Tag, Herr Sperl. Vielen Dank, dass Sie sich kurz Zeit nehmen. So ein Global Peace Photo Award, so eine Veranstaltung, die lebt ja auf der einen Seite von den Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern, mit den Fotografien hier vertreten sind, aber natürlich im Hintergrund bedarf es auch einer ganzen Reihe von Sponsoren, die so eine Veranstaltung hier möglich machen. Sie gehören zu dem Kreis, die sich hier sehr, sehr stark für diesen Wettbewerb engagieren. Vielleicht mal als Eingangsfrage, welche persönliche Beziehung haben Sie denn zur Fotografie?
Persönlich zur Fotografie habe ich sicher nur eine laienhafte, wobei natürlich Fotografie mich immer schon begeistert hat, wie professionell und perfekt man Situationen bildlich festhalten kann. Die professionellen Fotografen sind natürlich außerordentlich begabt in solchen Situationen. Mir persönlich gefällt das extrem gut, weil man eben außergewöhnliche Situationen für immer bildlich festhalten kann und eine schöne Erinnerung darin hat. Was würden wir ohne Fotos tun?
Genau. Wenn man sich hier umschaut, in dem Restaurantbereich, in dem Barbereich, da hängen auch Fotografien. Was ist da aktuell zu sehen?
Aktuell, das ist jetzt ganz frisch und so weiter, das war eine Vernissage letzte Woche mit dem Fotograf René van Backel, der sich eben sehr stark mit den Etruskern aus dem italienischen Raum, das nördlich von Rom bis Florenz rauf sich zieht, eben auseinandersetzt. Und da haben wir eben beschlossen, relativ kurzfristig vor 6 Wochen eine gemeinsame Vernissage auf die Füße zu stellen, weil es eben wichtig ist, über Bilder solche Geschichten zu erzählen und eben den Gästen und Interessenten also aus Ausstellung eben darzulegen, ja.
Ja, Geschichten zu transportieren über Fotografie, über Bilder, das war auch gestern Abend bei der Preisverleihung das Thema, da eine große Bandbreite an Arbeiten, die dort zu sehen waren, unterschiedliche Ansätze, sich mit dem Thema Frieden auseinanderzusetzen, das bildlich darzustellen. Wie haben Sie diese Veranstaltung gestern im österreichischen Parlament erlebt?
Ja, persönlich also höchst professionell. Ich kann den Lois immer wieder nur meine Hochachtung und meine Gratulation aussprechen, mit wie viel Herzblut, Liebe und Leidenschaft er herangeht mit seinen ganzen Partnern und Unterstützern. Es war wieder eine außergewöhnliche Veranstaltung. Die Bilder, die präsentiert wurden, also eines, was ich froh bin, dass ich dieses weiterhin hoffentlich unterstützen darf, aber in der Jury möchte ich nicht sitzen, weil ich würde mir irrsinnig schwer tun, einem Bild einen Vorzug zu geben, weil diese Bilder sprechen, sagen mehr wie 1000 Worte, sagt man ja, und also das sind hochprofessionell, sehr aussagekräftig. Mir ist wichtig, dass die Veranstaltung noch sehr, sehr, sehr lange besteht im Zeichen des Friedens. Das Wichtigste, was wir brauchen, wäre der Weltfrieden, und das ist ein kleiner Part davon, der was dazu einen Beitrag leistet.
Ja, ein kleiner Beitrag, der dazu geleistet wird, auf jeden Fall auch die Öffentlichkeit zu schaffen für verschiedene Themen, die sich mit Frieden auseinandersetzen und mit den Problemen in der Welt. Jetzt sind Sie engagiert hier bei dieser Veranstaltung auch in der Hinsicht, dass die Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmer, alle, die jetzt darum angereist sind, hier nach Wien, bei Ihnen beherbergt werden im Hotel. Wie ist es dazu gekommen, dass Sie da diesen Part spielen bei der Veranstaltung?
Ja, mehr oder weniger liegt das natürlich etliche Jahre zurück. Ich glaube, das führt bis ins Jahr 2015, wo Lois Lammerhuber ohne Termin kurz vor Ort war und mir sein Projekt präsentiert hat und ob ich Interesse hätte, also mit der Flemings-Gruppe natürlich im Hintergrund das zu unterstützen. Ich war hellauf begeistert, muss ich sagen, und das war Entscheidung nicht aus dem Bauch, sondern aus dem Herz heraus, also das sofort zu machen, weil es wird sehr viel Unterstützung in andere Richtung geleistet, aber das ist etwas, das muss unterstützt werden, damit es einen sehr, sehr langen Atem hat.
Ja, ich habe mich hier auch sehr, sehr wohl gefühlt. Die Nacht, die ich hier verbringen durfte bei Ihnen, es ist ein Hotel, was sehr zentral gelegen ist. Einmal zur Veranstaltung gestern, alles fußläufig. Das ist natürlich eine sehr, sehr, ja, ein schöner Aspekt des Ganzen. Leider war jetzt nicht so viel Zeit, sich die Stadt auch noch anzugucken. Das werde ich sicherlich bei Gelegenheit nochmal nachholen. Aber Sie, ja, kennen Wien sehr, sehr gut, haben hier auch viel mit Touristen zu tun, die hier bei Ihnen übernachten und sich dann auch die Stadt angucken. Das würde ich jetzt gleich mal gerne nutzen, von Ihnen ein paar Tipps über Wien zu erfahren. Was hat Wien für Touristen und Touristinnen zu bieten?
Ja, Wien ist natürlich eine ganz klassische K&K-Stadt, aus der Kaiserzeit noch heraus, also architektonisch von den ganzen Gebäuden rund um die Prachtstraße, die Wiener Ringstraße bietet sie sehr, sehr viel. Man kann natürlich klassisch beginnen mit den ganzen Museen. Wie gesagt, von der Standpunkt von diesem Hotel ist eigentlich eine ausgezeichnete Lage, ob jetzt zum Wiener Rathaus, zum Naturhistorischen oder Kunsthistorischen Museum. Empfehlenswert ist das erst neuerdings entstandene 2019, glaube ich, das Weltmuseum. Das ist sicher ein Geheimtipp, sollte man sich ansehen. Aber Albertina ist ein Thema, natürlich das Schloss Schönbrunn und das Belvedere sollte nicht fehlen. Aber dennoch empfehle ich immer wieder auch unseren Gästen fernab von den Tourismusströmen, sich Wien so anzusehen, wie der Wiener lebt. Die ganze Beisel-Szene, natürlich die Heurigen-Szene, man darf ja nicht vergessen, Wien hat ja einzigartigerweise ein eigenes Weinbaugebiet, das seinesgleichen sucht. Also auch hier haben wir unsere Kooperationspartner und unsere Tipps, also wirkliche Geheimtipps, wo jetzt nicht jeder hinkommt, und das sprechen wir dann gerne aus, das anzuwenden. Also weg vom Mainstream, ja.
Ja, eine schöne Palette, die da auf die Besucherinnen und Besucher wartet. Wien hat sehr, sehr viel zu bieten, auch mit dem Umland, wenn man das noch mit einbezieht.
Ja, unbedingt. Also es ist ja auch im Zeichen der Zeit, dass der Radtourismus in Wien immer wieder stärker wird. Vor allem durch die E-Bikes merken wir das. Und der Donauwanderweg ist ja nicht weit von hier. Und wenn ich mit Gästen spreche mit den E-Bikes, die fahren fast auf Tagesausflüge in die Wachau. UNESCO-Weltkulturerbe sollte man auf jeden Fall gesehen haben. Traumhafte, wunderschöne Gegend, und noch besser sind die Weine und herzlicher die Menschen.
Ja, das kann ich bestätigen. Die Wiener, das sind wirklich ganz freundliche Menschen. Also ich habe mich jetzt hier auch sehr, sehr wohl gefühlt. Vielleicht noch 2, 3 Sätze zum Hotel an sich. Welche Infrastruktur bieten Sie hier Ihren Gästen?
Ja, die Infrastruktur, also das Hotel ist ein historisches Gebäude. 1910 wurde es damals eröffnet, war über 100 Jahre eigentlich die Zentralverwaltung von Wiengas und wurde dann von der Eigentümerfamilie gekauft und eben zu einem Hotel ins Leben neu erweckt, mit 207 Zimmer auf 6 Etagen. In der 6. Etage haben wir die wunderschönen City View Zimmer mit Blick über Wien, atemberaubend. Ansonsten bieten wir natürlich unseren Gästen alles, was ein internationales Haus bieten muss, von Restaurant, Barbereich, Konferenz, Location, klein aber fein gehalten, und Fitness, Spa-Area.
Ja, wirklich eine gute Adresse, wenn man in Wien ist und sich die Stadt hier angucken möchte, hier übernachten und dann die Stadt erkunden. Danke Ihnen ganz, ganz herzlich für das Gespräch und wünsche Ihnen weiterhin auch viel Freude mit dem Wettbewerb und dass diese Zusammenarbeit noch lange bestehen bleibt.
Ja, ich sage herzlichen Dank für die Möglichkeit und wünsche Ihnen noch schöne Stunden in Wien und dass Sie bald wiederkommen mögen.